Thanks for listening to DIY for Business. It's Russ and Greg with you. Greg, I'm in a phone booth.
Well, that was immediately the first question I was gonna ask you. That is not your regular studio you're in right now.
Yeah, no, well, so I decided, and I wanted to just like go on it all in on this because, one of the subjects for today, we're going to talk about like this whole startup thing, right? And I was like, well, a lot of startups start at home, but a lot of also they start in these like co-working spaces, right? Or these incubator type of things. I'm in a co-working space today, and I'm trying out one of the little phone booths. I came in here and I turned into Superhost, so I'll be good. But
You better be good. You
yeah,
better be good.
exactly. But yeah,
I have a question though.
yeah.
If you're in an incubator type situation, do you feel like you're getting tested on?
Well, I don't know how many people are actually doing any kind of maybe. Actually, who knows? In a COVID era, this whole thing could be an incubator for with a bunch of people. So I don't know. Like I haven't. This is day one in this place, and actually, by the time this show runs, the Beeswax, the company that I work with, will have already rented a space here, and we have this little office space for 4 and whatnot, and I think that's going to be cool. But I don't know. By the time this runs, I'll either be saying, "Wow, this was an amazing success," or I don't know about this. So we'll have to see. It's day one here.
So it's day one. So the decision's made. You're going to use it, or you're testing it right now.
I'm like coming in just to see what it's like to prep for me coming in, because we've already made the call to do this thing, because once I saw it online, I was like, okay, this place is cool. I got to do this. And funny enough, so my wife and I, we've been watching these like rom-coms on Netflix lately, and they're going through and like all this different whatever, and we see this Christmas one. It's like, oh, this one looks kind of fun, a little Christmas in California or something like that, right? I'm like, oh, I'll go check this out. We start watching it. It's filmed in this office space.
Oh wow, that's a sign. That's a signal.
I was like, oh, okay. This is the place to go. And we just watched it like 2 nights ago. So I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting.
Well, unless it's a Christmas disaster movie, then you don't, right?
Yeah,
then you probably
we
don't.
It
might be a bad signal. And then I know you're a big espresso guy. They offer espresso there.
They do. So they not only do they have espresso, like the actual, it's a machine making espresso that's actually pretty good. As you can tell, I've had some. But also they have like this, I don't know, it's called a bevy machine, where it's all kinds of other sorts of beverages. And then they have kombucha and IPA on tap.
Oh,
so
interesting combination there. But
this could be great. So yeah, they've got it all here. So it's
I'm curious,
right outside the window here.
They sent you in, right? You're checking this place out, and I'm just curious, like, what are you looking for to help you make a decision on whether this is a good fit or not a good fit for Beeswax?
Well, for me personally, it was, can I get here? How's the parking? How's the lunch? Right? I mean, that's you got to check out that stuff first. So that's all passed. That's all good. But then, it's like, what about like, is the space that we're going to be in, can we collaborate in there? Can we actually, bring in some clients maybe for certain things? And like what, I think it's going to pass all those tests. Like it's.
So they have a lot of conference rooms you can use. They have individual workstations. Do they have like a lot of printers that if you need to print out?
Yeah, exactly. Like everything you could want, and need. It's like, it's right here. So it's really cool. And this isn't an advertisement for this place, because I haven't even mentioned the name, and I won't. So that way we don't plug them unless they want to maybe give Beeswax a free month or something. We'll chat
or sponsor the show, which we would take too. So that's fine.
Exactly. Sure. But it's kind of fun being next to like other people, seeing other people working instead of just being in my little space at home. And who knows, right? Like what's going on in the world? Who knows what's going on out there? I know my 4 walls, but I don't know. I don't know beyond that. Here, it's kind of cool to see other people, making phone calls and, just doing different things, like the business stuff. So it's fun. But then I got me wondering, like, what are they doing? like what is their business? So I'm going to probably have to start meeting all these people, and then, maybe we'll start bringing some of these people on the show. They'll put them in another phone booth, and we'll.
I was gonna say, is there enough room in your phone booth to fit you?
I don't think we can get a guest in here, but like talking to them about their different businesses. What's interesting is there's like a newspaper in here, like, whoa, a newspaper. First of all, those used to be in big buildings. Remember one of the newspapers up here that we used to advertise in, they had this huge building. Now they're in one of these small little co-working spaces. So it's interesting to see like that. But then there's like some signs up on some of the offices of companies that I've never heard of that I'm really interested in. Like, okay, what is that? Right? It sounds like some sort of tech startup or something. So that'll be interesting. But I don't, what do I go ask him? What do I go talk to him about? Well, maybe Bill, our guest here, could give me some ideas.
Hello.
Hey, Bill.
Thanks for having me, Greg and Russ.
So you've started countless startups, and we're just talking about that over the last 5 years. You've started a bunch. So I figured you were a great person to have on the show to kind of experience day one with me here at this co-working space. And
yeah, I've done my time in some co-working spaces. Due to the new nature of my present job, I can't be on site for any individual company, but a lot of community events in Buffalo are in the various co-working spaces. So yeah, I get there often.
And they're doing one of those tonight. So I gotta, get ready for that. I don't who knows what that's going to be. If they already have beer on tap, what are they going to bring in tonight? This is going to be exciting. But anyway, Bill, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell the audience kind of who you are.
Sure. So I'm Bill Bolden from Buffalo, New York, and professionally, I've been a developer for 24 years, and I have been programming since I was 5.
Wow.
I learned how to program in BASIC shortly after becoming literate. But yes, I spent the first half of my career rising up the ranks from being just a junior developer to a mid to a senior to a full stack to a CTO. And then I fell in love with launching tech startups, and I started off with a bang with a great one, great culture, great product that exited. And I wanted to stay with the startup life. So I joined another, and that one was kind of a bad bet that didn't work out. And then I moved to another, and that one was a bad bet that didn't work out. And so I had this moment where I realized I want to keep building these startups, but it is traumatic in America to change insurers multiple times in a year, right? So from now on, if someone wants me to build their startup for them, they can have me part-time. And so I formed Bill Bolden LLC, which is just a shell company for myself, where I'm sort of like a technical co-founder for hire. So for a while, I was really just like a developer who was super good at launching products. But as I continued to be in the passenger seat, in the sidecar, watching the founders struggle with building out sales teams, deciding on their social media marketing strategies, fighting with the app store, securing loans, hiring and firing, every part of raising a business, I began acquiring experience 360 degrees about everything it means to be in a startup, because there really is nothing new under the sun. So I specialize and focus on like designing your product and building it and making it work and writing the code and fixing the bugs and launching the app or platform. But I have found in the last 18 months specifically, I can bring a lot of value to the people who I essentially co-found with by also just being able to advise on everything, right? Like, yeah, I am no customer service expert, but I have watched 15 other startups try and fail to implement a startup customer service program. And I'm no salesperson, dear God, no, but I have watched 12 other startups, try and eventually figure out what works for sales, and I can bring their learnings to you, right? So now I'm sort of this jack of all trades, but still master of one. And in the last 5 years, I have launched 22 distinct tech products. And right now I am actively working with 7. So There are 7 companies I'm working at right now. The one where my tenure is the longest, I've been at about 14 months. A lot of the others, I'm still just in my 3rd or 4th month. But then, their products will launch. And then usually some people want new features forever, more and more and more. Sure. But a lot of people are like, hey, this is perfect. It does what it does. Thanks. You built us the Instacart. Now it's built. We'll call you once a month when we need a new feature. But other than that, it's on us.
That's rare. I mean, I worked in the tech industry for a long time, and usually there's always innovations like constantly being thrown around with the engineers and founders of companies. You mentioned something that caught my ear. You said in the past 18 months that it sounded like, and I would love to have you expand on this. Like, sounded like something. A switch got flipped or something changed in the past 18 months because you specifically used that time frame. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I would say that I finally got the confidence and just the raw numbers to begin stepping out of my role. Because at first, as a CTO, it was very much like, if this is a question about the Python code, we'll ask you, buddy, right? But this is about the bank account. And then, it was somewhere like around 18 months ago, I would have been at like the 15th startup mark. And so it very much was sort of like starting to be like, wait, listen, I can help you with all these things because there's nothing new under the sun here. Like, you're having the same problem this other guy had. It happens to every startup. You're misusing your R&D tax credits. No, I can't file the legal work for you. I don't know how to do that, but I know that you should be doing that, right? Let me tell you what we did, and then you can take it to your lawyer. And there's just so many of those, right? AWS credits, hiring somebody who doesn't work out and not firing them promptly enough, difficult hiring decisions, expanding into new markets, coping with HIPAA and GDPR and SOC 2, securing against ransomware, cyber attacks, and now AI prompt injection, and always in the development space of things, like developers, man. I've been a developer my whole life, and us developers, you got cowboys who go their own way and shoot from the hip, writing code that no one else will ever understand. You also have like extreme rigorous people who are perfectly happy to write 1,000 lines of documentation for 1 line of code and then argue with you over whether or not it should be unit tested. There's just so many different ways in the world to be a developer. And I've seen them all, right? So I can wrangle. Because the thing that comes back to it with my startups is like, the pressure is on, the clock's burning. Like, you have a runway. A lot of places it's 6 months. If you're lucky, it's 18 months. You have to get out there and prove the thing you're doing can make money, or convince somebody to give you an arbitrarily large check by making them think you will make money if only given the check. And so that's the game. And I find that a lot of people who are used to very corporate jobs are not built for the sort of like, I'm not talking 60-hour work weeks or something. I'm just talking about you can't dither, like you can't circle back with me in a week. I need to push a new feature by the end of the workday. Help me. That kind of stuff.
Okay, so I would say a number of our guests, maybe they're developers. A number of them are not. One thing that I've always that when you mentioned like the Wild West coders, right? The cowboy coders that are getting in there and just, maybe not doing the right thing, but they're doing whatever just works to get the job done. I think that there's definitely going to be some of that out there. Is there any way when you're in, the position of not being the CTO, you've got somebody else building out something for you. Is there any way that just the average person can check code or to know if there's quality or to figure out, did these guys actually do a decent job on my website or my app or whatever it is?
You are speaking my language. So I would describe about half the startups I've worked with as rescues. I come in and they're like, hey, Bill, you got to help us. we heard you were good at this. We have a team of devs, but they don't seem to like get a lot done or whatever. I'll come in, I'll look at the code, and about half the time I'll be like, okay, yeah, they're doing a good job. This is decent code. I would have done pretty much everything this way, but let's talk about your management processes or something, right? And then sometimes though, I come in and I'm like, you are being defrauded, right? Like, it just happens. And so sometimes I've seen it all, because I've launched 22 products, but I probably worked with 50 startups in the last 5 years. The others are ones who I like came in and did a single day audit for. And sometimes it's they went cheap with a junior who just hasn't seen enough shit. You know, like there's often a one of my red flags for founders is the whole like, oh, you know, I'll just have my nephew build it. He does code. And it's always like,
that was a big red flag.
It is.
It's like, so many of those.
I always tell them, this is what I call the nephew paradox. Why is it that your idea is so huge that it will change the world and make you $1 billion? And also, your nephew should just do it in a weekend. One of these things can't both be true, right? But it also speaks to a lack of understanding the craftsmanship of a proper looking product.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's because people went cheap. Sometimes it's because people
well, I think a lot of times they just don't know. They don't know what to look for, like Russ is saying. Yeah. It's like, I'm not a coder. I'm a CEO, but I'm not a coder. And somebody comes in and says, I know code and I can build you this. And like, I don't know the proper tests to ask them or to give them to know if they know what they're talking about or they're just BSing me.
Well, so I mean, we're just looking at it like from the outside, right? Like somebody give you I want you to build me a box. Okay, here's the box. We know that it's a box on the outside because we can see it, but the inside, like, who knows, right? And I mean, you know, I'm somewhat of a like on the technical side of things, so I get, you know, I get looking at code, I get, you know, some of that stuff, but there's only to a certain level, and then it's like it becomes a box for me as well.
Well, so this is what I would really, I spoke a lot this year. I spoke at several conferences, and they were all startup focused. And the number one thing I want to convince my non-technical founders of is that it's not as scary as you think, and that you have to disabuse yourself of the knowledge, of the thought that there is some rocketry going on that you should just check out. Because let me put it this way. I've come into companies, right? But I've come into company. If you hired an accountant to do your books, and then when, you know, you're not a CPA, you can't do that. They can. But then in the end, you asked, can I see my books? And they said, no, you would never understand it. You would fire that person. Right. And yet I constantly come into companies where I ask, well, can I see the code? And they're like, the developer has never given me access to the code or the place where it's stored. I actually don't know. And then I'll be like, go ask your developer. And the developer will be like, oh, there's no need for you to look at it. Red flag town, right? Yeah, it's just like the accountant. Here's the thing. I'm not asking you to be a compiler or learn Node or Python or anything, but modern programming, not old like C++ memory management stuff, but modern programming is easier to grok than you think, at least for reading it, not writing it. Yeah. And well-written code should actually read a lot like English. Especially Python. And I tell you, if you go look at like a functioning good website that has Python code, and you go find the file called process order, and it's like, you know, if order, then start processing dot end dot await. And like, you don't need to know what all that stuff does, but like the zhuzh is there. Like we're on the right track, right? Like this. Yeah. So even being able to see that, and they should be able to justify their decisions. So, like I said, when I come in, sometimes it's just juniors who are in over their head. Sometimes it was someone hiring their nephew and not thinking ahead to the future. Sometimes it's actual fraud. And the other thing is, though, is you just got to have a sense for like how it's done, which is where raw reps matters, right? Like, I go through this a lot, especially at startups, where we'll work with a UX designer and there'll be this lavish, like, here we've made the login screen with the forgot password button and all that. And it's like, man, like in the time you were doing that, I already subscribed to Auth0 or Clerk and just used their pre-built login plugin. Because logging into a website is the oldest thing in the book, and there are just pre-made components that do it. Good. And then it's like, and here's our custom buttons with the rounded corners. And it's like, I was just going to go use Material or Tailwind or Bootstrap or Mantine, which provides you ready-made hundreds of buttons that look different ways. Pick one and I'll roll with it and use it. And in this way, I'm turning out new startups usually in 6 to 8 weeks. There's so much that's being done as a service that if you just have awareness of the tools that are out there, you don't have to send emails yourself. You can use SendGrid. You don't have to write code that sends text messages yourself. You can do that through Twilio. For marketing messages, you should be sending people through Constant Contact, MailChimp, or OneSignal. You don't have to write your own CRM. You should use Pipedrive or Salesforce or something. You don't have to write your own credit card processing code. You simply get an API key to Stripe and embed that back in your backend. You don't have to have servers to host it because AWS, Vercel, and Heroku exist. And I could go on like this for 10 minutes. Like half the value in me is just that I know what all those things are. Because again, until the emergence of ChatGPT, there was nothing new under the sun for years and years and years. Now it's a little different, but
yeah. It's all in how it's all just wired together for whatever you're trying to do, right? Like you grab the right things for the, and understanding and knowing those tools is also sometimes difficult, which is where, you know, somebody coming in at your level to help to make those decisions on making the right choices. Because
a lot of tools don't work well with each other, right? And then, you know, and then they're trying to piece those together and something breaks, right?
I'll tell you that there have been big strides in this space recently. That specific thing you said, for a long time, Zapier was the tool that glues all other tools together. Mm-hmm. And they boast that there are over 12,000 different SaaS platforms that sync into and out of Zapier. Zapier, though, has become prohibitively expensive because they dominated that market and then they started raising the fees. And now it's like a penny for every Zap. So when you get up there and start hitting scale and you're processing large lists of contacts by funneling them from a Google Sheet to a Salesforce to a HubSpot to a Shopify, the Zapier bill gets up there. There are some other apps like Retool, Make, and N8N that do the same thing and are not insanely overpriced, but they're all more fledgling, and so they don't have the same deep app directory. That's the problem is those boast like 600, 700 apps that they can integrate with, which is a far cry from 12,000.
Right. Yeah, I've loved Zapier, but yeah, the pricing has gotten out of control. And
I would encourage you to check out Make, N8N, and Retool.
I hadn't heard of NAN. I'll check out that one. For personal stuff, I've used If This Then That. Like, yeah. I've loved that thing since, whatever. And I was like, early on that thing. And they were like, well, we're thinking about starting a paid portion. I'm like, I have used this thing and it's been such a great tool. Yeah, I'll pay you guys. Like, I don't even think I have to, but I picked a price and paid them, whatever per month, because it is so cool and it's so helpful to me that I don't know what I would do without it. So I don't want them going away. So yeah, I'll pay you guys.
So I'll tell you, I know you probably got a lot of people in your audience who are considering launching a tech startup one day. And I want to give you Bill Bolden's 2 rules for launching tech startups.
Okay. Right. I love it. Let's do it.
First, if your idea is B2B, why shouldn't you be the one to build it? But if your idea is B2C, why should you be the one to build it? So people have all this incredible B2B experience that they don't believe they have. Everyone is always wondering, when will I get my $1 million idea, right? And they don't realize that, like, being a real estate lending escrow manager for the last 10 years, they're sitting on this like thing of like, you know, I deeply understand how real estate escrow is broken. And like, nobody would know that but you. But if you came up with something that fixes it, you know exactly what it would do, who you would sell it to, and you probably know who your first 50 customers would be, right? And people have this incredible depth of knowledge about the field they've specifically worked in their whole life. But instead, people are all hung up on B2C ideas, like something that would be an app on people's phones that everybody could use. And what I want them to understand is that no app, even very good ones that function great and have no bugs and do what they're supposed to do, just takes off just because. They have concerted pushes of capital and influence behind them. And if you think that you're like, it would be great, everybody will want to list their pool on my pool sharing site, and it's like, just because it exists. And why? Like, what will you do? How will you get on 50 community boards? And how will you get laws passed to help you regulate it? Are you even thinking about all this stuff, or do you just think it would be cool so people would use it, right? So I encourage people to pursue their B2B app ideas while understanding that a B2C app idea, like if you think you're making the next TikTok or something, it's like not without tens of millions of dollars to bribe celebrities with, you're not, right? I don't know. Do you have anything to how does that resonate with you?
I right from the start there, I liked what you said. I mean, it's really noticing and paying attention to the differences there. I think that's really wise. I think that if I were thinking about a B2C app, I would probably like, well, how do I shift it to a B2B app, right? Like, because I mean, that's the other thing with startups is there's so much shifting. And I feel like I've worked with a couple of startups over the years that have shifted way too many times, right? Like from a B2B to a B2C, back to a B2B, over to a B2C. And then like, what are you guys? Like, what are you trying to be? Like,
right.
You know,
they lose their focus and they just kind of lose their way. They try to be everything to everybody and they can't be anything to anybody.
Yeah, I feel like do you encounter that problem as well? Or is that?
I do. I'm a little anti-pivot. It's not that I'm anti-pivot. I'm just not pro-pivot. Just because pivoting has a lot of big evangelists. Here's what I'll say, right? I heard whenever you hear startup advice from a successful exiter on stage, what they're essentially saying is, here are the numbers I played when I got a winning lottery ticket.
Yeah.
And because for every example, there's a counterexample, right?
Yeah.
And here's one thing I want to say. Like, there are some people who look at the success of, you know, an Uber or an Airbnb and be like, it started as an air mattress company and now it's what it is today. Like, there were so many things on the way.
Yeah.
For every one of those, there's also an alternate vision of the Instagram, which was like, we do one thing and we do it well. We are just going to be the world's best photo sharing app. We're not going to chase other features. We're going to be the best place to share your photos. Nothing ever deviated them from that goal. And then that led them to $1 billion too. So I don't think there's one right thing where it's like always pivot all the time or never pivot. Let your vision guide you.
Well, how do you evaluate which startup you want to work with and which startup is like, this is garbage? Like, you know?
Well, so again, there are some red flags, which is not appreciating the work of product engineering as though it is a fungible thing that can be paid for and not a true and deep partnership, right? So I prefer to work with founders who view the developer team they're building as really their co-pilots along this whole journey. And I do think it is a red flag when somebody's like, I don't even care, like rock bottom, right? If requirements go in, code goes out, find somebody. And I don't like want to know their name or get to know them. It's like, you will get a bad product that way. Other red flags is like, yeah, it'll go viral and everyone will use it. Or not being able to accept what an MVP looks like. This is the problem I get into a lot with non-technical founders, is that we spend most of our life interacting with software that has had 50 million or more dollars of developer time sunk into it, right? Every time you use Airbnb and it does a little nice thing like, ooh, people near you liked this house and need to open a support call right here. Every time you use Gmail and it corrects a typo for you, all these things, you are using $50 million software, right? And I need people who understand that I cannot get them that, not without $50 million, right? They're trying to get this whole thing done for 75K. And so it's going to be bare bones. It's going to look pretty. It won't be ugly, but it's like only going to do a couple things, and it won't do like the whole kitchen sink, and have a great feature that suggests what the people near you like, and have a support hotline you can call, and be properly defended against spam attacks, and every one of those is like, so I do want to work with people who are as scrappy as I am, right? They'll this one company I worked for, 3 weeks in, we got the prototype out and in the first hands, and it wasn't very pretty, but it worked, and it started bringing in sales immediately. And the founder was like, this is awesome, right? He's like, yes, it was only 3 weeks of work, but we're on the way, right? What will we do when we have months and months of work? That's even better. But I need people to not be blinded by what finished software looks like.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's also that's pretty wise, because you can't do, you don't have Google's budget, you don't have Apple's budget, you don't have Microsoft's budget, you don't have Meta's budget.
That's one of my biggest other red flags, although more for the designer, not for me, is when you ask them what like an example of like the look and feel they're going for their brand is, right? And they point to like Apple and be like, I see, you are modeling yourself after the single design that the most money has ever been poured into in the history of the world.
Exactly.
Is what you want your design to be as good as. Yes. Exactly. I'd be like, if you're playing football in the backyard with your kid and you're like, just make it a little more like Tom Brady. Try to throw it the way Tom Brady.
Right. I've never thought of that example. I like that one. I'm going to use that the next time I encounter that. So if I'm running out of phone booth time here, so we got to start to wrap up, but we're also about at our usual time here. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, if they've got a tech product that they need some help on, or they need one of these audits or some advice, how do they do so?
All right, the best way to get in touch with me is LinkedIn, where I am very active. I'm putting my thingy in the chat. Maybe you can flash it on screen.
Okay.
I'm Bill Bolden on LinkedIn, but you can flash that on screen if StreamYard lets you. And then my website where I take inquiries is billbolden.com, but it's basically just like 3 screen lengths of testimonials of people who says Bill does a good job building products.
Well, at least you have that many people that says you do a good job. So that's fun. And then I want to make sure everybody sees the spelling of your name, Boulden.
Yeah. Boulden, like Boulder, but with an N.
There you go. There you go. Thanks so much for coming on with us, Bill. That was a lot of fun talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I could have riffed for hours with you guys, but one cannot be in the phone booth for too long.
So. Exactly. It gets a little hot in here. I'll tell you that much. They need to put some fans in here. Yeah. Hey, and thank you for subscribing, for listening, for reviewing DIY for Business. And as a reminder, we've just started getting everything over on YouTube over the last 6 months or so. So be sure to subscribe over there. Even if you're listening over here, like go check it out over there. Like watch us. You could see us. You could see the phone booth that I'm in. It's really, really exciting. I'm trying to figure out what's in the shadows of the phone booth over there. Anyway, thanks so much. And as always, with, DIY for business with Russ and Greg here, you are not alone.